She worked the base clinic like any other nurse. The morning shift at Bagram Air Base Medical Facility began at 0600, and Lieutenant Commander Elena Ghost Vasquez moved through the sterile corridors with the quiet efficiency of someone who had spent 15 years healing wounded warriors. To the doctors, medics, and patients who saw her daily, she was just another Navy nurse, competent, professional, and unremarkable in the way that military medical personnel often were. At 43, Elena carried herself with the composed dignity of a senior NCO, her dark hair pulled back in regulation style, and her scrubs bearing the subtle insignia that marked her as an experienced medical officer. She treated everything from routine sick calls to combat injuries with the same methodical precision, never showing emotion, never revealing the depth of experience that lay beneath her calm exterior. But when a Black Ops unit passed through the clinic for their pre-deployment medical clearances, when Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole caught sight of her profile and felt recognition hit him like a physical blow, everything changed. He stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the nurse who was checking a soldier's blood pressure, his mind racing to process what he was seeing. Slowly, with trembling hands, Marcus pulled out a worn photograph from his tactical vest, a picture he had carried for 8 years, showing his former unit posed after a successful mission in Afghanistan. And there she was, third from the left, in full combat gear and tactical equipment. Not a nurse, not a medical officer. A former special operations warrior who had vanished without a trace after a classified mission went sideways. Until now. Welcome to the Silent Salute. Before we continue with this incredible story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. Your support means everything to us, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please hit that subscribe button. We're growing every day, and every single one of you makes that possible. Thank you for being part of our community. Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan had been the hub of American military operations in the region for over 2 decades, a sprawling complex that housed everything from fighter squadrons to special operations units. The base medical facility was one of the busiest trauma centers in the world, treating not only American service members, but also coalition forces and Afghan civilians caught in the crossfire of an endless war. Elena Vasquez had been working at Bagram for 6 months, having requested the deployment as a way to get back into a combat environment after years of stateside assignments. To her colleagues, she was a dedicated Navy nurse with extensive trauma experience, someone who could handle the most severe battlefield injuries with remarkable composure. Her personnel file showed a straightforward career progression: nursing school, Navy commission, various hospital assignments, deployments to medical facilities in Iraq and Afghanistan. But that file was a carefully constructed fiction, designed to hide a past that was classified at the highest levels of government. Elena's real military career had begun 12 years earlier, when she was selected for a joint special operations unit that conducted the most sensitive missions in the global war on terror. For 6 years, she had operated under deep cover, conducting reconnaissance, direct action, and counterterrorism missions that were so classified that even their existence was denied by official sources. Elena's transformation from special operations warrior to Navy nurse hadn't been voluntary. It was the result of a mission in 2016 that had gone catastrophically wrong, leaving her team dead and her own identity compromised beyond repair. The military had offered her a choice: disappear completely into civilian life, or accept a new identity and continue serving in a different capacity. Elena had chosen service, trading her rifle for a stethoscope, but never losing the warrior's mindset that had kept her alive through years of combat operations. The Black Ops team that entered the medical facility that morning was preparing for a classified mission somewhere in the Hindu Kush Mountains. They needed routine medical clearances before deployment, blood work, physical examinations, updates to their medical records. It was standard procedure, the kind of administrative requirement that special operations units dealt with constantly. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole was the team's medic, a former Army Ranger who had cross-trained into special operations after multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. At 31, he was a veteran of dozens of combat missions and had seen enough action to recognize a fellow warrior regardless of what uniform they wore. But as he entered the clinic for his medical appointment, he wasn't expecting to see a ghost from his past. The recognition wasn't immediate. Elena had her back turned when Marcus first entered the examination room, focused on preparing equipment for his physical. Her hair was different, longer, styled in a way that conventional military regulations required. Her body language had changed too, adopting the professional demeanor of a medical officer rather than the coiled readiness of a combat operator. But when Elena turned around, when Marcus saw her face in profile as she reached for a blood pressure cuff, memory crashed over him like a wave. The bone structure was identical. The way she moved still carried traces of tactical awareness, and there was a small scar above her left eyebrow that he remembered from a firefight in Helmand Province 8 years earlier. "Elena," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the medical facility. Elena turned at the sound of her name, and for a split second, her carefully maintained composure cracked. She saw Marcus standing in the doorway, wearing the subdued insignia and specialized equipment that marked him as special operations, and she knew that her carefully constructed new life was about to be shattered. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm Lieutenant Commander Vasquez. I'll be conducting your medical examination today." But Marcus wasn't buying the denial. He had served alongside Elena for 2 years, had fought beside her in some of the most intense combat operations of his career. He knew her voice, her mannerisms, the way she unconsciously positioned herself to maintain tactical awareness even in supposedly secure environments. "Elena Rodriguez," Marcus said, using her real name, the name that had been buried along with her former identity. "Call sign Ghost. You served with Joint Special Operations Task Force 17 from 2010 to 2016. You disappeared after Operation Nightfall in the Karengal Valley." The effect of hearing her real name, her operational call sign, was like being hit by an electric shock. Elena's hand trembled slightly as she set down the medical equipment, and for a moment, the mask of professional composure slipped completely. "Marcus Cole," she said quietly, abandoning any pretense of not recognizing him. "I should have known you'd end up in special operations. You always were too stubborn to stay with conventional forces." The reunion was surreal, taking place in a sterile medical examination room while the sounds of helicopter rotors and jet engines provided a constant backdrop. Marcus closed the door and activated the sound dampening system that was standard in all medical facilities that handled classified personnel. "Jesus, Elena, we thought you were dead," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "After Nightfall went sideways, when you didn't come back with the rest of us, when there was no body, no trace. Command told us you had been killed in action. There was a memorial service and everything." Elena sat down heavily in the examination chair, the weight of 8 years of secrets and isolation suddenly becoming unbearable. "I might as well have been dead. Elena Rodriguez died in that valley, Marcus. What you're looking at now is just someone else wearing her face." The story that Elena told over the next hour was one of sacrifice, betrayal, and the kind of moral complexity that defined modern special operations. Operation Nightfall had been a joint mission involving multiple special operations units, designed to capture or eliminate a high-value target who was coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout eastern Afghanistan. Elena's role had been to infiltrate the target's compound disguised as a local woman seeking medical treatment for her child, a cover that required her to spend weeks in nearby villages, learning the local dialect and customs. It was dangerous work that required her to operate completely alone, with no backup and no extraction. Plan if things went wrong. The mission had been compromised from the beginning. The target knew that American forces were hunting him, and he had prepared an elaborate trap that would lure the special operations team into a kill zone where his fighters could eliminate them completely. Elena had discovered the trap just hours before the mission was scheduled to begin, but when she tried to warn her team, she learned that their communications had been intercepted and that enemy forces were already moving to surround their position. Faced with the choice between escaping to safety or trying to save her teammates, Elena had chosen to stay and fight. She conducted a one-woman campaign of sabotage and misdirection, using improvised explosives and sniper fire to disrupt the enemy's plans and create confusion that allowed most of her team to escape. But the effort had cost her everything. Elena was wounded in the fighting, captured by enemy forces, and held prisoner for 3 months in conditions that nearly broke her mentally and physically. When she was finally rescued by another special operations team, she learned that her identity had been compromised, her cover blown, and her face known to every terrorist organization in the region. The military's response had been swift and pragmatic. Elena Rodriguez was declared killed in action, her family was notified of her death, and her service record was classified and buried. She was given a new identity, a new background, and a new career as a Navy nurse, a role that would allow her to continue serving while remaining safely anonymous. The hardest part wasn't the physical recovery, Elena told Marcus as she finished her story. It was the psychological adjustment. Going from being an elite operator to being nobody, having to pretend that the most important years of my life never happened. Marcus listened in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what Elena had sacrificed. But you could have gotten out completely. You could have taken a civilian job, started fresh somewhere else. Why did you choose to stay in the military? Elena's smile was sad but genuine. Because this is who I am, Marcus. I'm a warrior, a healer, someone who serves something bigger than herself. Taking off the uniform, walking away from the mission, it would have been like dying for real. She gestured around the medical facility. This isn't the same as special operations, but it's still service. I'm still taking care of warriors, still contributing to the mission. It's not the life I planned, but it's a life with meaning. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Another member of Marcus's team was wondering what was taking so long with his medical examination. Elena quickly composed herself, returning to her professional demeanor as she prepared to continue with the routine medical procedures. But Marcus wasn't ready to let the moment pass. Elena, what you did on Nightfall, saving the team, sacrificing your identity, everything you've given up, it matters. People should know what you did. Elena shook her head firmly. No one can know, Marcus. My cover has to be maintained, not just for my safety, but for operational security. There are still people out there who would kill me if they knew Elena Rodriguez was alive. But your family thinks you're dead. Your parents, your siblings, they've been grieving for 8 years. The pain in Elena's eyes was unmistakable. That's the price I pay for the choice I made. They're safer believing I'm dead than they would be knowing the truth. Sometimes love means making the hardest sacrifice of all, letting the people you care about believe something that protects them. Marcus completed his medical examination in silence, both of them understanding that this encounter would have to remain secret. But as he prepared to leave, Marcus made a decision that would change both of their lives. Elena, my team is heading out on a classified mission tomorrow. We could use a medic with your background, someone who understands special operations and can handle whatever we might encounter. Elena looked up sharply. Marcus, I'm not that person anymore. I'm a nurse now, not an operator. I haven't carried a weapon in 8 years. But you still have the training, the instincts, the experience. And more importantly, you have something that most medics don't have. You understand the operational mindset. You know how to think like a warrior when lives are on the line. The offer was tempting in ways that Elena hadn't expected. For 8 years, she had been a spectator to the war she had once fought so passionately. She had treated the wounded, comforted the dying, and sent warriors back into battle, but she had never again experienced the clarity and purpose that came from being directly involved in the mission. What kind of operation? She asked, her professional curiosity overriding her initial reluctance. Hostage rescue. American contractor being held by Taliban forces in a remote compound. The mission requires us to infiltrate, extract the target, and exfiltrate without detection. We need a medic who can handle trauma care under fire and who won't slow us down if things get complicated. Elena was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks and benefits of returning to the world she had been forced to leave behind. I'd have to get clearance from my commanding officer, and there would be questions about why a Navy nurse was being attached to a special operations mission. Leave that to me, Marcus said. I have some influence with the mission commanders. They're more interested in capability than credentials, and your medical training combined with your operational background makes you uniquely qualified. That evening, Elena found herself standing in the quarters she shared with 2 other Navy nurses, staring at a footlocker that she hadn't opened in years. Inside were the remnants of her former life, tactical equipment, personal items, and photographs that showed Elena Rodriguez in her prime as a special operations warrior. At the bottom of the footlocker was something she had thought she would never need again. Her personal sidearm, a customized pistol that had been with her through dozens of combat missions. Elena held the weapon in her hands, feeling its familiar weight and remembering the confidence and purpose that had defined her former life. The next morning, Elena reported to the Special Operations compound on the far side of Bagram Air Base. She was wearing modified scrubs that could accommodate tactical equipment, and she carried a medical kit that had been adapted for combat operations. The team that Marcus had assembled was small, 6 operators plus Elena, and their mission was as dangerous as it was important. The briefing was conducted in a secure facility that reminded Elena of countless similar sessions from her past. The target was Dr. James Patterson, a civilian contractor who had been captured while conducting humanitarian work in a remote province. Intelligence indicated that he was being held in a fortified compound that was defended by experienced Taliban fighters who would not hesitate to kill their prisoner if they felt threatened. Elena's role was to provide medical support during the mission and to treat Dr. Patterson if he had been injured during his captivity. But as the briefing continued, it became clear that her operational experience was also valued. The mission commanders asked for her input on tactics, timing, and contingency planning. "Ma'am," the mission commander said, addressing Elena with obvious respect, "Staff Sergeant Cole tells me you have extensive experience with this type of operation. What's your assessment of the intelligence picture?" Elena studied the satellite images and intelligence reports with the practiced eye of someone who had conducted dozens of similar missions. The compound layout suggests that the defenders are expecting an attack from the ground. But there's a weak point in their southern perimeter that could be exploited if we approach from the river valley. She pointed to specific features on the aerial photographs. "If we insert here and move along this ridgeline, we can get within 50 meters of the target building without being detected. The challenge will be extracting Dr. Patterson without alerting the rest of the compound." The mission launched at 0200 hours, with Elena and the Special Operations team inserting via helicopter into a landing zone several kilometers from the target compound. As she moved through the darkness with equipment that felt both foreign and familiar, Elena realized that 8 years of medical service hadn't erased the tactical instincts that had kept her alive through years of combat operations. The approach to the compound took 2 hours, with the team moving carefully through terrain that was ideally suited for ambushes and observation. Elena found herself falling back into the heightened awareness that had once been second nature, reading the landscape for signs of enemy activity and positioning herself to provide both medical support and tactical assistance as needed. The assault on the compound was swift and precise, with the team neutralizing the exterior guards and breaching the building where Dr. Patterson was being held. Elena moved with the assault element, her medical training allowing her to distinguish between wounded enemies who posed a continued threat and those who required immediate medical attention. Dr. Patterson was found in a basement cell, weak from poor nutrition and showing signs of physical abuse, but alert and able to move under his own power. Elena's examination revealed dehydration, multiple contusions, and a possible concussion, but nothing that would prevent his evacuation from the compound. But as the team prepared to exfiltrate, enemy reinforcements arrived in numbers that exceeded their intelligence estimates. What should have been a quick extraction became a running firefight that tested every skill Elena had learned during her years as a special operations warrior. "Ghost, we need you up front," Marcus called out as enemy fire intensified from multiple directions. "Rodriguez is down, and we need covering fire from that window." For a moment, Elena hesitated. She was a nurse now, not a combat operator. Her job was to treat the wounded, not to engage enemy forces. But as she looked at Rodriguez, a young special operations soldier who had been shot while trying to protect the extraction route, she realized that sometimes healing and fighting were the same thing. Elena grabbed Rodriguez's rifle and moved to the window that Marcus had indicated. The muscle memory of years of combat training took over as she identified targets and began providing the accurate, sustained fire that allowed the team to move Dr. Patterson to a more secure position. For 40 minutes, Elena alternated between treating wounded team members and engaging enemy forces that were trying to overrun their position. She performed field surgery on Rodriguez, while simultaneously calling out target locations to her teammates. She treated Dr. Patterson's worsening concussion while coordinating with extraction helicopters that were struggling to land under enemy fire. When the helicopters finally arrived and the team began their evacuation, Elena was the last person to board, providing covering fire until every other team member was safely aboard. As the aircraft lifted off and enemy rounds impacted harmlessly against its armored hull, Elena realized that she had rediscovered something she thought she had lost forever, the clarity and purpose that came from being a warrior in the truest sense of the word. The mission debriefing was conducted at a secure facility away from the main base, with senior officers who understood the classified nature of Elena's background. The operation had been a complete success. Dr. Patterson was safe. The team had suffered only minor casualties, and valuable intelligence had been gathered about enemy capabilities in the region. But more than the tactical success was the recognition of Elena's contributions to the mission. The team commander's report specifically noted her ability to seamlessly transition between medical and combat roles, her tactical expertise, and her courage under fire. Lieutenant Commander Vasquez, the mission commander, said during the formal debrief, "Your performance on this operation was exceptional. You demonstrated exactly the kind of versatility and professionalism that special operations missions require." He paused, consulting his notes. "I'm going to be recommending you for assignment to our permanent medical staff. We need someone with your unique combination of medical expertise and operational experience." Elena was quiet for a moment, understanding that accepting the offer would mean returning to the world of special operations that she had been forced to leave 8 years earlier. It would mean risking exposure, compromising the carefully constructed identity that had kept her safe, and potentially endangering the people she cared about. But it would also mean returning to the work that had given her life meaning and purpose, contributing to missions that protected American interests and saved American lives. "Sir," Elena said finally, "I'm honored by the offer, but I need to understand the security implications. My background is complicated." The mission commander smiled. "We're aware of your history, Lieutenant Commander. Your service record may be classified, but your capabilities speak for themselves. We're not interested in your past. We're interested in your future contributions to the mission." Over the following weeks, Elena found herself transitioning from base medical facility to the Special Operations Compound, where her dual expertise in medicine and combat operations made her invaluable to mission planning and execution. She worked with teams preparing for hostage rescues, direct action missions, and reconnaissance operations, providing medical support while also contributing tactical expertise. The work was dangerous and demanding, but it was also deeply satisfying in ways that Elena had forgotten were possible. She was using all of her skills, medical, tactical, and leadership, in service of missions that directly impacted the safety and security of American personnel throughout the region. Marcus Cole became her closest collaborator and friend, someone who understood her history and helped her navigate the complex challenges of maintaining operational security while serving at the highest levels of special operations. Together, they developed new protocols for medical support during classified missions and trained other medics in the advanced trauma techniques that could save lives in the most austere environments. But perhaps most importantly, Elena rediscovered her identity as both a healer and a warrior, understanding that the two roles were not contradictory, but complementary. She could serve the mission by treating wounded operators, but she could also serve by ensuring that missions succeeded and that her teammates returned home safely. 6 months after her reunion with Marcus, Elena received a call that she had been dreading since accepting her new assignment. Her commanding officer informed her that her cover identity had been compromised during a counterintelligence investigation, and that her safety could no longer be guaranteed if she remained in the region. Once again, Elena faced the choice between safety and service. She could accept extraction to a secure location, assume yet another identity, and start over in some other capacity. Or she could remain in place, continue her work with special operations units, and accept the risks that came with exposure. The decision wasn't difficult. Elena had spent 8 years learning that identity wasn't about names or backgrounds or official records. It was about purpose, mission, and the willingness to serve something larger than oneself. Elena Rodriguez might have died in the Corangal Valley, and Lieutenant Commander Vasquez might be compromised, but the warrior and healer who had emerged from those ashes was exactly who she was meant to be. Sometimes a ghost returns to haunt the living in the best possible way. Sometimes a warrior who has been declared dead proves that death is just another mission parameter to be overcome through courage, adaptability, and unwavering commitment to the mission. Sometimes the person who has sacrificed everything for their country finds that their greatest sacrifice leads to their greatest opportunity to serve. Elena's story was far from over. But whatever name she carried, whatever identity she assumed, whatever risk she faced, she would continue to serve as both healer and warrior, understanding that sometimes the most important battles are fought by people whose very existence is a closely guarded secret. The photograph that Marcus had carried for 8 years still showed Elena in her combat gear, but now he had new pictures. Images of her treating wounded operators, planning missions, and proving that legends don't disappear, they just find new ways to serve. This story was brought to you by the Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever known someone who sacrificed their identity for a greater cause, who gave up recognition and acknowledgement to serve something larger than themselves? Someone who understood that true heroism sometimes means letting the world believe you no longer exist so that your mission can continue? Tell us in the comments about the hidden heroes in your life, the people who serve in shadows and silence, who give up everything, including the credit for their sacrifices, to protect others. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, if you believe that the sacrifices of those who serve in classified roles deserve recognition even when their names can never be spoken, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one, where we'll continue to share the stories of extraordinary people who remind us that some heroes live forever in the shadows, and that sometimes the greatest honor is to serve without ever being honored.